Removing and replacing parts for the Omen 16L Gaming Desktop PC TG030000A. Tools you need. How to replace the HDMI port cover. No tools are required to remove or install this assembly. Removal. Gently pull the HDMI port cover to remove it. Replacement. Push the HDMI port cover into place. How to replace the display port cover. No tools are required to remove or install this assembly. Removal. Gently pull the display port cover to remove it. Replacement. Push the display port cover into place. How to replace the side access panel. Tools for the task: Torx screwdriver. Removal. Loosen the captive Torx screw that secures the side access panel to the frame. Slide the side access panel toward the back of the computer until it releases. Remove the side access panel from the computer. Replacement. Position the side access panel on the computer. Slide the side access panel toward the front of the computer until it locks into place. Tighten the captive Torx screw securing the side access panel to the computer. How to replace the wireless LAN module. Tools for the task: Phillips screwdriver. Before you begin, remove the side access panel. Removal. Remove the Phillips screw that secures the wireless LAN module. Remove the wireless LAN module from the socket. Remove the plastic cover from the antenna connectors. Disconnect the antenna cables from the module. Use caution to not damage the cables. A damaged cable can degrade performance. Remove the wireless LAN module. Replacement. Reconnect the antenna cables to the module. Use caution to not damage the cables. A damaged cable can degrade performance. Replace the plastic cover over the antenna connectors. Insert the module into the socket at a slight angle. Replace the Phillips screw to secure the wireless LAN module. How to replace the RTC battery. Tools for the task: A flat-bladed tool. Before you begin, remove the side access panel. Removal. To release the battery from its holder, squeeze the metal clamp that extends above one edge of the battery. Lift the battery from its holder. Replacement. Slide the replacement battery into position, positive side up. Press down to secure the battery. How to replace the heatsink. Tools for the task: Thermal grease. Before you begin, remove the side access panel. Removal. Gently squeeze the retaining clips on either side of the heatsink to release them. Remove the heatsink from the motherboard. Replacement. Remove the thermal grease from the heatsink and the processor. The thermal grease should be replaced every time the heatsink is removed. Using the thermal grease applicator, apply a small amount of thermal grease to the top of the processor. Place the heatsink into position while squeezing the retaining clips on either side. Align and secure the retaining clips. How to replace the front bezel. Tools for the task: A flat-bladed tool. Before you begin, remove the side access panel. Removal. Gently release the 3 tabs securing the front bezel to the computer. Lower the front bezel and remove it from the computer. Replacement. Align the bottom of the bezel with the computer. Press the bezel into the computer to secure the bezel using the 3 tabs. How to replace the front bezel screen. Tools for the task: a flat-bladed tool. Before you begin, remove the side access panel and front bezel. Removal. Using a flat-bladed tool, release the tabs that secure the screen to the bezel. Remove the screen from the front bezel. Replacement. Align the screen with the front bezel. Press the screen into the bezel to secure the locking tabs. How to replace the system memory. No tools are required to remove or install this assembly. Before you begin, remove the side access panel. Removal. Press outward on the 2 latches on each side of the memory module to release it. Grasp the memory module by the sides and pull the module out of the socket. Replacement. Match the notch on the module with the tab on the memory module. Carefully slide the memory module into the socket at an angle and then press down to lock it into place. How to replace the front system fan. Tools for the task: Torx screwdriver. Before you begin, remove the side access panel and the front bezel. Removal. Remove the 4 Torx screws on the front of the computer. Disconnect the 2 connectors from the motherboard. Pull the fan out and away to remove it. Replacement. Place the fan in position. Reconnect the 2 connectors to the motherboard. Install the 4 Torx screws that secure the fan to the computer. How to replace the rear system fan. Tools for the task: Phillips screwdriver. Before you begin, remove the side access panel. Removal. Remove the 3 Phillips screws that secure the fan. Disconnect the connector from the motherboard. Pull the fan out and away to remove it from the computer. Replacement. Place the rear system fan into position. Reconnect the connector to the motherboard. Install the 3 Phillips screws that secure the fan to the computer. How to replace the power supply unit. Tools for the task: Torx screwdriver. Before you begin, remove the side access panel. Removal. Remove the 3 Torx screws securing the power supply unit. Disconnect the 2 connectors from the motherboard. Remove the cables from the routing channel. Disconnect the remaining connector from the motherboard. Remove the cables from the guide. Press the tab at the base of the power supply unit and slide the unit back. Remove the power supply unit. Replacement. Place the power supply unit into position. Slide the power supply unit into the computer, locking it into position. Replace the cables under the guide. Reconnect the connector to the motherboard. Place the cables in the routing channel. Reconnect the two connectors to the motherboard. Replace the 3 Torx screws. How to replace the GPU. No tools are required to remove or install this assembly. Before you begin, remove the side access panel. Removal. Release the lever on the frame by rotating it away from the computer. Locate the locking lever at the base of the GPU. Press in on the lever at the base of the GPU and pull the GPU up and out of the computer. Replacement. Align the contacts on the GPU with the motherboard. Press the lock on the motherboard connector and gently insert the GPU into the connector until it clicks into place. Secure the lever on the frame by rotating it inward. How to replace the CPU fan. Tools for the task: Phillips screwdriver. Before you begin, remove the side access panel. Removal. Remove the 4 Phillips screws on the fan. Disconnect the connector from the motherboard. Remove the fan by pulling it up and away from the CPU heatsink. Replacement. Position the CPU fan on the CPU heatsink. Connect the CPU fan connector to the motherboard. Replace the 4 Phillips screws that secure the fan. How to replace the CPU heatsink. Tools for the task: Phillips screwdriver and thermal grease. Before you begin, remove the side access panel and CPU fan. Removal. Loosen the 4 captive Torx screws that secure the heatsink. Remove the CPU heatsink by pulling it up and away from the computer. Replacement. Remove the thermal grease from the heatsink and the processor. The thermal grease should be replaced every time the heatsink is removed. Using the thermal grease applicator, apply a small amount of thermal grease to the top of the processor. Place the heatsink into position. Tighten the 4 captive Torx screws that secure the heatsink. How to replace the CPU. No tools are required to remove or install this assembly. Before you begin, remove the side access panel and CPU heatsink. Caution: do not touch the pins in the processor socket. Removal. Pull the locking lever away from the processor and rotate the lever to its open position. Raise and rotate the processor retainer to its open position. Carefully lift the processor from the socket. Replacement. Position the processor so that the marking on the corner, usually a triangle or an arrow, matches the corresponding marking on the socket. Carefully place the processor in the socket. Lower the processor retainer. Press the locking lever down until it clicks into its locked position. How to replace the SSD. Tools for the task: Phillips screwdriver. Before you begin, remove the side access panel and CPU heatsink. Removal. Remove the Phillips screw that secures the drive. Pull the drive out of the system board connector. Replacement. Align the drive with the system board connector and insert it at an angle. Replace the Phillips screw that secures the drive. How to replace the antennas. Tools for the task: a Torx screwdriver and a flat-bladed tool. Before you begin, remove the side access panel, front bezel, and the wireless LAN module. Gently guide the antenna cables through the frame. Remove the tape securing the antenna cables to the computer. Remove the cables from the routing channels. Remove the 2 Torx screws securing the antennas. Remove the antennas. Replacement. Place the antennas into position. Replace the 2 Phillips screws securing the antennas to the computer. Reroute the antenna cables through the frame. Replace the tape securing the antenna cables to the frame. Gently guide the antenna cables through the frame. How to replace the motherboard. Tools for the task: Torx screwdriver. Before you begin, remove the side access panel, front bezel, HDMI cover, display port cover, wireless LAN module, GPU, rear system fan, front system fan, and CPU heatsink. Removal. Disconnect any remaining connections from the motherboard. Remove the 5 Torx screws that secure the motherboard. Remove the Torx screw that secures the port shield bracket. Remove the port shield bracket. Slide the motherboard to the side and remove the motherboard. Replacement. Lower the motherboard into position. Slide the motherboard into place. Replace the port shield bracket. Replace the Torx screw that secures the port shield bracket. Replace the 5 Torx screws that secure the motherboard. Reconnect the connectors to the motherboard.